The headline says the EU busted a Russian tanker. The reality is they just proved the game was rigged all along. Russia has built an illicit maritime network of nearly 600 aging ships that now moves over one-third of global oil trade, generating $100 billion annually, more than the total value of Western military aid to Ukraine combined. When a single ship gets boarded in the Mediterranean, it does not signal victory. It signals that traditional sanctions are obsolete against an adversary weaponizing plausible deniability. This is not about catching smugglers anymore. It is about realizing how Russia has turned commercial shipping into an asymmetric tool for sabotage and funding without ever firing a shot. To understand why this matters, we must look past the tactical success of a boarding operation and examine the structural reality of what is happening in the open ocean. The narrative that sanctions are working relies on the assumption that stopping one vessel disrupts the system. In strategic terms, however, removing a single ship from an armada of nearly 600 vessels is akin to pulling a pin from a grenade without causing an explosion. The fleet operates as a massive, distributed engine designed specifically to absorb shock and maintain flow, regardless of individual losses. Consider the sheer scale of this operation. As of late 2024 and early 2025, this shadow network transports roughly 3.7 million barrels of oil every single day. This volume accounts for approximately 65% of all Russian seaborne exports. When you compare this to the financial output of Western sanctions efforts, the disparity becomes stark. The illicit trade generates between $87 and $100 billion in annual revenue. That figure is not just a number. It is a strategic counterweight that effectively neutralizes the impact of price caps through sheer volume and evasion rather than compliance. The mechanism behind this resilience is what we call plausible deniability, weaponized by design. The fleet operates by exploiting the legal gray zones of international maritime law. Vessels frequently disable their automatic identification system transponders to go dark in remote zones like the Eastern Mediterranean or off the coast of West Africa. In these areas, they conduct ship-to-ship transfers of crude and refined products under cover of darkness, often while moving at high speeds that make tracking difficult for naval assets. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. Ownership is masked through a complex web of flags of convenience registered in jurisdictions with loose oversight, such as Panama or Liberia. This creates a digital camouflage that makes ships legally invisible until they are caught red-handed. The problem for Western authorities is that current seizure laws require proof of direct state ownership to justify confiscating the asset. Russia intentionally keeps this link out of reach. They use shell companies and layers of intermediaries so deep that even if a ship is boarded, proving it belongs to the Russian state in a court of law becomes an insurmountable legal hurdle. This structural obsolescence highlights a deeper failure in the current global order. The United States has become what some analysts call the world's sanctions superpower, imposing 3 times more sanctions than any other nation and listing thousands of entities annually. Yet Russia continues to export oil at volumes comparable to pre-invasion levels. This proves that unilateral pressure fails against adaptive adversaries when global commodity markets lack multilateral enforcement buy-in. When major consumers do not fully enforce price caps or turn a blind eye, the incentives shift entirely toward evasion rather than compliance. But this is no longer just an economic story about lost revenue for Western nations and continued funding for war machines elsewhere. The Shadow Fleet has evolved into something far more dangerous: an asymmetric warfare platform capable of kinetic sabotage. These are not merely commercial vessels running oil. They have become tools for intelligence gathering and critical infrastructure disruption. Intelligence reports indicate that GRU-linked operations have utilized these same commercial vessels to cut undersea fiber optic cables, most notably in incidents involving the S-Link 2 line near Estonia. The method is terrifyingly simple yet effective, using heavy anchors designed to snag on seabed cables while maintaining plausible deniability as a standard cargo ship. This blurs the line between civilian trade and kinetic warfare so thoroughly that Western navies face a dilemma of their own making. Every time a vessel goes dark or engages in suspicious maneuvers, it could be smuggling oil for war funding or preparing to sever the digital arteries connecting Europe's economy. The fleet consists of over 700 ships if you include support vessels, with 72% being older than 15 years. These aging hulk operate without insurance and create severe environmental hazards, yet they remain operational precisely because Western enforcement relies on legal frameworks that require proof of state ownership, a bar Russia intentionally keeps out of reach. The European boarding operation exposes the gap in our defense capabilities. It forces a choice between ineffective blockades or escalating to kinetic conflict against assets that appear civilian. If navies begin shooting at ships suspected of being Shadow Fleet members, they risk triggering an international incident with genuine commercial vessels. If they do nothing, the sanctions regime continues to bleed credibility while billions flow into Moscow's coffers and sabotage operations continue unchecked in the dark waters of the Mediterranean. We are witnessing a shift where traditional enforcement tools have been rendered obsolete by an adversary that has adapted its entire economic infrastructure to operate outside the rules-based order. The boarding was not a victory, it was a demonstration of how deeply entrenched this evasion strategy has become. As long as global markets lack unified enforcement against price caps and legal frameworks remain tied to state ownership, Russia will simply adapt by buying older ships and using more opaque ownership structures. The war is not over in the way we thought. It has shifted from the front lines of Ukraine into the legal gray zones of international shipping lanes where every boarded ship reveals a failure rather than a success. The real question for the future is whether Western powers can build new enforcement mechanisms that do not rely on proving state ownership, or if they must accept that commercial shipping will remain a primary vector for Russian strategic power and asymmetric aggression. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.